How are you, lovers of the Betrayal Diaries channel? First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry for everything I've done, but thank you for accepting my story. I'm going to tell you how I cheated on my boyfriend with the app driver. I couldn't resist. I was very needy and wanted to. My name is Amy and I'm 28. My boyfriend Mikey and I are 26. We've only been living together for a short time. We decided to take this step after 2 years of dating. Although we were young, living together had already shown us the challenges of sharing life in a small room. My boyfriend has always been a humble, hard-working, and dreamy guy. He grew up in a simple family and never had access to the luxuries that some of my work colleagues considered simple, like a car or a motorcycle. But that was never a problem for us. I admired his strength and determination to work. He did his best to contribute to the expenses of the apartment we rented together, but he couldn't save the money for a car or even a motorcycle. This meant that every night, after my shift at the steakhouse, I had to take an Uber home. Working at the steakhouse wasn't exactly what I had envisioned for my life, but it was an honest job that helped pay the bills. The restaurant was open until the wee hours of the morning, and although I got very tired, I earned a good wage, so it was worth it, and my colleagues were like a second family to me. But what weighed me down the most was the schedule. Coming home late, especially on days when I was exhausted, made me even more anxious for a break that never seemed to come when I got home. For the first few months, my boyfriend would wait up for me. He was worried about me, especially as I was taking public transport or relying on unknown drivers in the middle of the night. But over time, he started to fall asleep before I arrived. I didn't blame him. His work was also exhausting, and we both knew that the routine was starting to wear on our relationship. Still, there was affection and companionship between us, and that kept us going. Most nights, my only wish was to get home, have a shower, and fall into bed. The idea of catching an Uber at the end of the day wasn't the most pleasant, but it was necessary. And although I didn't like relying on strangers for transportation, I had to admit that it was a safer option, since we didn't have to worry about gas, car maintenance, or worse, Makey waking up at dawn to pick me up. The routine of work and tiredness didn't leave much room for fun times with my boyfriend. Mikey and I spent the little time we had together trying to relax. I missed the time when we went out more and had fun without thinking about our responsibilities. Living together every day brought a new reality, and the relationship, although going well, began to look different because of the challenges of everyday life. Even so, I believed that this period would only be a phase. We were building something together, and that required patience. Not everything was like in the movies, where love was always easy and fun. Our reality was made up of effort and work. It was an ordinary night, like any other. When I finished my shift at the steakhouse, I couldn't wait to get home, take a shower, and throw myself into bed. The routine was beginning to weigh on me more and more, and the only thing that kept me going at the end of the day was the reward of lying down with my boyfriend. As I waited for the Uber on the sidewalk, I felt the cool breeze hit my face, a relief after the intense heat I'd spent in the kitchen. When the car arrived, I approached distractedly, checking the license plate on the app. As I got into the vehicle, I was surprised by the driver's familiar face. It was Logan, one of the most frequent customers at the steakhouse. "Aim, is that you?" he asked, with that friendly smile. It took me about 10 seconds to recognize him outside the restaurant, but then I smiled back and replied, "Hi, Logan. Yes, I am. What a coincidence, huh?" Before continuing with this true account of infidelity, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. He laughed as he started the car, saying how small the world is, and if it was that time, it was the end of my working hours. I took advantage of this and continued the conversation. "Tell me about it. These long shifts get to me, but that's part of it, isn't it? What about you? Did you decide to work on these apps too?" Logan explained that working as a driver was a way of supplementing his income. He had a small business during the day, but with the difficult economy, he had to find other ways to secure extra money. I listened to him carefully, admiring his determination. It seemed that everyone was struggling to get by, and I understood well the weight of these decisions. As we talked, the trip went by faster than usual. He wasn't just a stranger, however small. We had that intimacy. He had a relaxed way of talking, and for the first time in a long time, I felt relaxed coming home from work. It wasn't just the familiarity of seeing him as a customer at the steakhouse. There was something about his manner that put me at ease, as if it was natural to trust him. When we were almost home, Logan paused, seeming to think of something. "Look, Amy, if you want, I can pick you up the next few times, outside of the app. I'll make it cheaper for you. I know that these daily runs take a toll on your pocket." The proposal took me by surprise. Deep down, it made sense. As well as saving money, I would also have the security of knowing exactly who was taking me home every night. I thought for a moment before replying and made up my mind. "Look, Logan, I really appreciate this. I think it would be great. Yes, we can arrange it." I finished by joking that I was afraid of catching some crazy person on the app because there were a lot of them. He smiled, seemingly satisfied with my answer, and told me that it was a deal and that I could count on him. The idea of having Logan as a fixed driver seemed convenient and, in a way, reliable. I just didn't imagine that this simple decision would end up changing my life so much. The weeks went by, and the rides with him became part of my daily routine. Never again would I ride with a stranger. Every evening, he was there, on time, waiting for me outside the steakhouse. His presence soon became a welcome relief at the end of each exhausting shift. Over time, our conversations during runs began to become the moment I looked forward to in my day. Logan was a man of easy conversation, always with a story to tell or a joke to lighten the mood. He talked about his life, his small business, and I found myself increasingly interested in the stories he shared. He wasn't just a customer, much less just a driver. There was a closeness between us that I hadn't felt for a long time. On one of these evenings, Logan asked me about my job, how difficult it must be for me to go out at that time of night, saying how tired I must be. I responded by saying, "It's very tiring, but at the same time, it's what I have, you know? It's not easy, but I need this job. What about you? How do you manage 2 jobs?" Logan kept his posture, but I noticed a shadow of tiredness in his eyes. "I do what I have to. It's that famous daily struggle, Amy, but I don't regret it. I guess, in the end, you get used to being tired." There was a moment of silence after his words, as if we were both thinking about the daily struggle our lives had become. I felt a certain relief at being able to talk about these things with someone who really understood what it was like to live with so many responsibilities. Over time, I began to realize that I was waiting for Logan at the door more anxiously than I should have been. There was something about him that attracted me, something that made me want to prolong every trip, just to be with him a little longer. He made me laugh. He made me feel understood in a way that I didn't feel at home. One evening, he decided to stop at a cafe that was open 24 hours a day to buy a coffee. He kindly offered me one, and I happily accepted, a little shyly. Sitting in the car, cups of hot coffee in hand, we talked about life in general. I was truly being listened to. "You deserve more than this routine, Amy. You're an incredible woman. You should think about yourself a bit more," Logan said, after hearing me talk about the difficulties of work and constant tiredness. Those words moved me. I knew Logan was right, but still, something inside me struggled between what I had and what I was beginning to wish I had. That night, as he dropped me off at the door, the silence between us seemed full of unspoken meanings. Getting involved with Logan was becoming inevitable, although I still tried to deny it to myself. I would tell him about my youthful dreams, about the aspirations I had left behind over the years, and he would listen with an attentiveness that even Mikey wouldn't hear. Logan seemed to understand my feelings and frustrations that I could barely put into words. At home, Mikey and I grew more and more distant. It wasn't that the love was over, but the routine had become a heavy burden, turning our relationship into something almost automatic. "Don't forget to leave a like." I began to wonder what was happening to me. It was as if I was torn between 2 lives, one in which I was Make's devoted girlfriend, living an ordinary routine, and another in which I was a woman rediscovering her passion and desire alongside Logan, even though he knew nothing about it. Deep down, I knew that something was changing inside me, something that scared and excited me at the same time. On one of those nights, after one of the races, Logan parked his car in front of my building, but neither of us made a point of getting out. He looked me in the eye, and at that moment, everything I'd been trying to hide came to the surface. "Amy, I know this might sound a bit complicated, but I can't stop thinking about you." My heart raced, and I knew I was at a dead end. Unable to hold back my feelings and my excitement, I replied, "Logan, I confess, I can't stop thinking about you either. The confession came out easier than I'd expected, as if I'd been waiting for the right moment to let it out. The attraction we felt for each other was clear, and in that instant, it seemed impossible to ignore. Logan took my hand, and I didn't flinch. His hand was warm. The bulge in his pants was clear. I couldn't look away. I felt a mixture of guilt and excitement overwhelm me. Makey didn't deserve it. I knew that. But there was something about Logan that I couldn't resist. He awakened in me a desire to live, to feel, that I no longer found in my relationship with Makey. I don't want to pressure you, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, whatever you decide. But he continued, his eyes fixed on mine. That statement hit me hard. Logan was giving me the choice, but I knew that any decision would have consequences. What had started out as a simple ride home had turned into something much bigger, something I didn't know how to control. A spicy fire was taking over inside me. I got out of the car, and when I entered the house, Mike was already asleep, as usual, and I had that priceless fire. I watched him for a moment, and guilt squeezed my chest a little. But along with the guilt, there was a latent desire, a hunger for something that I could only find in Logan's arms. I was torn, and for the first time, I didn't know which way to go. The following night, after so long talking and exchanging glances, it seemed that an invisible wall between us was about to fall. As I prepared to get out of the car, he grabbed my hand, stopping me from opening the door. "Amy, I can't pretend anymore that I don't feel anything for you," he said. When Logan said that, my heart kept beating faster. The words I wanted to hear were in the air now. I looked at him and couldn't say anything. Instead, I just leaned in front of him. It was an almost automatic movement, as if my body already knew what to do. Logan moved closer too, and I couldn't resist kissing him. The kiss was soft, but full of feelings that we had both been holding in for so long. It was as if all the desire of the last few weeks had finally found a refuge. When we broke apart, I was breathless, but keeping in mind that something had changed between us. Logan smiled, still holding my hand. "I knew it would happen someday," he said. And even though I felt the guilt growing inside me, I couldn't help the smile that formed on my lips. After the kiss, everything seemed different. The races with Logan became even more intense as the days went by. What used to be innocent conversations turned into exchanges of glances full of desire. Whenever he dropped me off at home, I hesitated to get out of the car, wanting those moments to last longer. One night, while we were stopped in front of my building, he pulled me closer and whispered, "You know we can't go on like this forever, right? One day your boyfriend will notice." Before continuing with this real account of infidelity, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. His words fell like a weight on me. I knew he was right. We were living a fantasy, something that would sooner or later have consequences. I looked at Logan, feeling the conflict inside me grow. I didn't want to hurt Make, but at the same time, I couldn't imagine my life without Logan now. "I know, Logan, but I'm not ready to choose," I whispered back. I got out of the car with my head full of doubts. Stay with Logan or keep my relationship with Mikey? I kept thinking about it. It was a cold night when Logan stopped the car in front of my building and pulled me into a kiss that was more intense than the others. Deep down, I knew we were going too far, but it was impossible to resist. As we kissed, I heard a strange noise, as if something had fallen outside. When I looked out of the car window, I saw a shadow moving. My heart raced. Before I could react, Mikey appeared from behind a dumpster. Her eyes were full of rage. "I knew it. I knew something was wrong," Makey shouted, hitting the hood of the car hard. Logan quickly unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out to face my boyfriend, trying to calm him down, but it was too late. The cuckold was furious, and the scene soon turned into a fight. They started exchanging punches, and desperation overtook me. Logan, stronger, managed to immobilize him, but this only increased his fury. "You've ruined everything, Amy! Everything!" he shouted before breaking free and running off. I stood there, feeling the weight of what I had done. Makey disappeared into the darkness, and I knew that, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The days after the fight were a nightmare. Makey disappeared from the apartment, and my cell phone was full of unread messages that I had sent in an attempt to talk to him. He had blocked me on all social networks, and no one knew where he was. Logan tried to console me, but I felt that nothing could fill the void that Makey had left. I was lost, guilty, and at the same time, confused about what I really wanted. Logan was affectionate, always telling me that everything would be fine, but his words couldn't calm my heart. I could barely eat or sleep. Guilt suffocated me. Every time I thought of Mikey, I remembered the way he looked at me that night, as if I had destroyed everything we had. And maybe I had. Logan was still by my side, but I knew that our relationship was tarnished by everything that had happened. The weight of Make's last words echoed in my mind. I had lost control of my life, and now I was paying the price for it. Logan was still by my side, but our relationship was no longer the same. What had once been exciting now seemed heavy with guilt. Make's absence was a hole in my life that I couldn't fill, no matter how hard I tried. One afternoon, while I was trying to distract myself at work, my phone rang. It was an unexpected call from a mutual friend who told me where Mikey was. He had moved in with a distant relative, trying to get away from it all. Knowing where he was brought relief and, at the same time, a new wave of pain. I knew he was hurting, and that was eating me up inside. When I got home that night, Logan was waiting for me, as usual. He noticed my expression and asked what had happened. When I told him about Mikey, I saw a mixture of kindness and sadness in his eyes. "Maybe you should try talking to him. I don't want you to live with regrets," he suggested in a calm voice. His advice surprised me. I had a difficult choice ahead of me, and time was running out. After the conversation with Logan, I spent the night in bed. I knew I needed to face up to my mistakes and sort out the mess my life had become. The next morning, I plucked up the courage and went to where Mikey was living. My heart was pounding, full of uncertainty, but I had to do it. When Mikey opened the door, he looked thinner, tired. His eyes, once full of life, were now purple with dark circles. We sat in silence for a few seconds, until he broke the ice by asking me what I wanted. He asked in a rough voice, but with a touch of sadness. "I want to apologize, Mikey. I ruined everything, but I need you to know that I still love you," I replied, my voice trembling. He sighed deeply, and then told me that he had always loved me, but he couldn't live with that anymore. What we had was just a veneer. His words were like a stab, but I knew they were true. The love we had, destroyed by betrayal, could not be repaired. Suddenly, I understood that the only thing to do was to let him go. Returning home, reality hit me hard. I had lost Makey, and even if Logan were by my side, nothing would be able to take away the pain. I looked around and felt the weight of my choices. Logan was waiting for me in the car, but this time I didn't get in. Instead, I handed over the key and said, "Thanks for everything, Logan, but I need some time alone." He looked at me, surprised, but didn't stop me. I knew that this was the only way to start again, with myself. If you liked this account of infidelity, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.